Welcome back to the latest episode of The Black Table here on the Black Star Network. I'm Greg Carr, honored to be your host. And The Black Table is a place where we convene conversations with interesting figures, thought leaders, scholars, activists, and we talk about topics that are important not only to the Black community, but through the Black community to the world. Today, as always, we are honored to be joined by someone who has an outsized importance to our people, to the country, and to the world. And especially happy today because this is a master teacher. He's one of my master teachers, and he's taught so many through his life, through his work, through his craft as a scholar, as a writer, as a thinker, as an institution builder. We are joined by Professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University, Dr. Daniel Omotosho Black. And Baba Omotosho, we're going to bring you in and get started. It's good to see you, Baba, and thank you so much for taking a little time out to talk to the community at the Black Table. Welcome, brother.
Hey, man, I'm so happy to be here. I don't know what in the world to do. Thank you for including me, and happy birthday to you, Grayson.
Yeah, we're recording this one on my actual birthday, so I give a shout out to all the ancestors and my
That's
parents. Right. Yeah, Haywood and Catherine Carr.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about your father, of course, who is at the heart in some ways of a conversation that you have had with me, with so many brothers, so many Black men around the world, and who I suspect may have even had some bit of informing your latest book, the blockbuster Book of the Month Club pick, Don't Cry for Me. We were there when you began workshopping and thinking through the ideas.
Right.
And for those of you at the Black Table, many of you know Dr. Black's work, of course, Baba Omotosho. But if you haven't read 12 Gates to the City, if you haven't read Perfect Peace, if you haven't read Listen to the Lambs or They Tell Me of a Home, then you need to get those books. And his book, The Coming, we're going to be discussing as well. But Baba, help us walk through the man that you have become. You born in Arkansas. You talk about your great grandmother. And see, that's how you know important Negroes, y'all. This man in the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, for those of you who don't know. Tell us a little bit about Daniel Omotosho Black, the man. Where you from, your upbringing, some of your background, brother?
And actually, I was not born in Arkansas.
Oh, Kansas City. I'm tripping. How do I not? You know what? Hey, thanks, y'all. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's right. That's right.
Kansas City. My father migrated during the Great Migration to Kansas City and met my mother there. And so my brother and I were born in Kansas City, but by age 5, my father had turned around and gone back to Arkansas. And so I grew up in rural Arkansas. Now, when I say rural, I want to be very, very clear about this, right? This is not suburban Arkansas. This is truly, truly rural Arkansas. And, no exaggeration. We had a well, we had an outhouse. And I don't mean in history, I mean when I was a kid, and I'm not all of that old.
No question.
My great grandmother, born in 1894, she lived next door to us in this little 4-room shack. And her name was Stella Swinton. That was my great grandmother, the love of my life, my great ancestor. And she was a tall woman. She was almost 6 feet tall. And she loved reading. She actually had been a school teacher. She was in her 80s when I was born, right? But she lived until I graduated from high school. But she had been a school teacher, and she just loved reading. But she, in her latter years, her sight went bad, Dr. Carr, and so she would have me to read to her aloud. And
you were her reader.
Sometimes I was a reader. And sometimes when I was reading stories or the Bible or whatever, she would say things like, that ain't how they probably said it. Say it like they said it. Right. So she really wanted me to like act it out. Right. And so I grew into this very dramatic reader because my great grandmother's insistence, she didn't want to just hear the words. Right. She wanted the energy. She wanted the performance of it. And so sometimes for hours, I would read to her Bible scriptures, Bible verses. I'd read to her Reader's Digest. That was probably we got most regularly.
What a blessing, though, Doc. I mean, so you've been raised as an African from the beginning. That sounds like the training the Jollies get in West Africa.
Yeah, in many ways.
She was really a memory keeper, huh? I mean, you know, you got your apprenticeship from a master teacher herself.
I absolutely think so. I think so. And I decided that because I loved writing and because I loved literature, and I loved it because my grandmother loved it, right? Because I loved her, right? And so I loved it. I decided that I'd major in English when I went to college, and so I did.
And can we pause there just for a second? Because I want to ask you how you ended up coming to Clark College. And one of, in fact, obviously I work at Howard, but the Atlanta University Center is really in many ways the anchoring HBCU complex in the United States of America. Yes. And you went from Arkansas to Georgia, and before we started, you were talking about the recent funeral of Dr. Thomas Cole, and you experienced a Clark that isn't there anymore, technically, huh? Could you talk about what drew you to Atlanta and then what your experiences there? Because I know you had some master teachers of your own who you always remind us of as you went through that process.
Absolutely. When I was in high school, I had a Black high school counselor who mentioned a thing called HBCUs. I knew nothing about them. Mm-hmm. And there was a Black college in Arkansas, Philander Smith. But I had never even been there. And that school was 50 miles away. But he asked me if I was interested in going to a Black school. And I said, I absolutely could be. And so I applied to Clark. I applied to Morehouse, applied to a couple other places. And I got in. And the reason I went to Clark, actually, Dr. Carr, is because they gave me the most money.
That's broke. The reason you think you went, but the ancestors had their hands on you. But they gave you the most money. So so you carried that love of literature right into college.
I did.
You knew you were going to major in English before you got there?
Yes. Huh. I knew I was going to be in English. In fact, when I first started at Clark, I was a dual English and music major.
Hey, y'all, if you want to see, look, we got to have you back about 2-3 times, because that whole music, in fact, let's just back up a second before you come into Clark. You were a dual music major in part because you came to Clark playing instruments. I mean, that's the other thing, the musical side of your life. When did you start singing, working in the choir? Was it a church thing? Acquired the skills playing the piano?
I was a church musician at age 7.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, I was. Literally.
Did they just deputized you? They said, "Boy, go over there and get to work."
I was sitting on telephone books, so I could reach the keyboard. Literally, I started taking piano lessons when I was about 4, and I was going to quit it because I had gotten tired of it by the time I was 6 or 7. But my father had bought a piano.
Oh no!
No. Sir, you're going to play that.
Oh, you're going to play that? No,
you're going to play that.
Much money as I spent.
You don't know anything about this, but he had to put it on layaway to get it.
What you talking about, man? What you talking about? Now, a lot of our viewers are younger people. Y'all don't know what layaway is.
No, about that layaway.
Or putting something on something. I got to put a little something on this.
Put a little something on something. Absolutely.
Oh my God! How long did it take him to get it out of layaway, man?
Oh, it probably took him a year, maybe longer.
So had you expressed an interest in this instrument?
Yes,
or was it...
yes, I did. When I was in Kansas City, I was maybe 3 or so. I saw a guy playing the piano in a mall, in a shopping mall, and I was flabbergasted that his fingers could do that, and just melodious sound came out of this. So I said, "Daddy, I want to play the piano." I hadn't started school. I hadn't even started kindergarten.
Yeah, you a child.
Oh yeah. And he said, "Boys, you show, you know." And I was like, "Sure, yes, absolutely." And so he put his piano on layaway. I got this piano probably by the time I was 5. I'd started taking lessons by then though. And Daddy said, "If you do nothing else in life, you're going to play that piano."
Well, so we got.
By the time I was 7 or 8, I was pretty good by then. I could sight read and all of that.
Really, we got to think. It's so interesting. Between Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. So not only that, the man you saw, man, you got the spirit of Count Basie in you, man. That was the Wild West of jazz in the 1940s and 50s, man.
I have all of that, but I absolutely loved the church because it gave me a space to be expressive, right, and to be creative. And a little boy being expressive was a dangerous thing in the 60s, in the country.
It's a dangerous thing today, brother.
Yeah, right.
As you write in your new novel, which folks are gonna get a chance to hear about your process in creating that. So anyway, I didn't mean to slow you down, man. So okay, so you arrive in Atlanta as a dual English and music major, and then what happens?
And then I start taking classes. I'm in the University Philharmonic Choir, all of that, and I decide that I'm going to stick with the English because the double majoring was really rough, and the scholarship I had, the lowest my GPA could fall was a 3.5.
So you couldn't
play. If it fell below 3.5, I would lose it, and I had no money whatsoever.
So you couldn't lose your scholarship, and a lot of folks don't realize if you don't know about HBCUs, certain majors carry with them not only a prestige, but a certain severity and discipline.
That's
Music is one of those majors.
It's one of those. Absolutely.
No question.
Absolutely. And in my case, English was too, because when I got to Clark, all of my professors were 70s. I inherited those old school segregated Black professors.
The legends.
Legends. Oh my God. Legends. Dr. Stella Brooks, Dr. Leroy Martin. And these people were fierce in their excellence.
Yes.
Man, they were absolutely fierce in their excellence. They were really amazing.
And not only them at Clark, but you had access to Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, ITC. So I'm sure you saw some of the other legends too.
Oh, absolutely I did. Absolutely I did. And now that I look back, I got the best undergraduate education I could possibly have gotten. Yeah. It was really literally the best education I could possibly have gotten. Mm-hmm. And so, fast forward, I finished Clark, and then I went to Oxford, England, for a while.
How did you end up in Oxford, man?
Because they advertised what was called the Oxford Modern British Studies program, where they were taking Black kids to England, especially English majors, right, to study the English where it started, right?
Right,
exactly. And so, so I went for a year and a half. In fact, I went my junior year, and when I came back, I just graduated.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. It was a great experience. I met tons. In fact, I was at Oxford with a young lady named Susan Rice.
Oh, really? As in National Security Advisor and Obama administration?
That's right.
Really?
Right. We were there together. Absolutely.
I don't think I even know that. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We're going to pause here for a moment, Dr. Black. And when we return, we're going to continue in your intellectual journey. And one that sees you go into the first, and at that time, the only university in the world that offered a PhD in African American studies. And you went on, of course, to acquire that under and alongside your great Jegna, none other than the great Sonia Sanchez. So we will be back at the Black Table in a moment. We're going to take a quick break. And when we return, we'll continue with Daniel Omotosho Black. Back in a moment.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
We're back at the Black Table on the Black Star Network. And when we left, Dr. Black, you were telling us about spending time at Oxford, and you came back to the United States. And how did you end up in Philadelphia, which is, of course, where so many of us met you? And everywhere you go, you transform. I guess I should ask you, did you start a choir? Did you organize a group in Oxford? Just as a good interviewee, did you find a church home in England, brother?
In fact, and this is really true, Oxford has this huge ledger of first-time events at the university. I started the Oxford Gospel Choir.
Stop it.
I did. And they brought out the big ledger. And they entered all of this because we did a concert on campus. they entered it in the ledger as a first-time event, the Oxford Gospel. Several years ago, I went back and they showed me the ledger, and it's in there. My name is in there.
You are in the legendary Oxford Ledger. I don't think Sir Eric Williams made the Oxford Ledger. I don't think the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago made the first Black Prime Minister. Man, so you return. How do you end up in Philadelphia? And those of you all don't know, Temple University at the time was the only place in the world you could get a PhD in African American Studies. Were you led to that, or did you always know you wanted to?
No, in fact, what happened was when I graduated from Clark, I saw a newspaper article announcing the PhD in African American Studies at Temple.
Yes.
And I said, that's really what I want. Really, I want to do Black literature.
Wow.
That's really what I want to do. And so my advisor at the time said, I'm sure it's going to be hell to get in because it's new. Probably everybody and their mom was applying.
And it was, and they were. Yes,
they were. And she said, however, you're an excellent student, so apply and let's see what happens. And I applied, and lo and behold, they took me.
And you were there with some of those early cohorts. You mind mentioning some of your classmates who you
I was in the very first class. And in fact, between me and Eddie, I think we were the two youngest.
And of course, Eddie, you talking about Eddie Glaude, who's a principal.
Yes. So Eddie Glaude was in that class. My God, who else was in that class?
The first class.
Yes.
It's interesting because
no, Eddie came a year after, actually.
Okay, I'm about to say, because Eddie went to Morehouse, you went to Clark, so they may have drawn on some HBCU talent to come into that program too.
They might have. When I came, the year I came, Clyde Robinson was there.
Who ended up at Southern University, Tuskegee. Yeah,
that's right. My gosh, I can't even.
No, that's okay. I just mentioned a couple of them, and for those of you who are following along with this and thinking about Dr. Black's outsized work as a novelist, his book "They Tell Me of a Home" kind of talks about this. If you don't mind, maybe mentioning a word about the legend, the great Sonia Sanchez, whose poem "Middle Passage," of course, helps frame that phenomenal work that you wrote, "The Coming." When I first encountered you, and so many of us, you were defending your dissertation.
Yeah,
you researched and wrote called "Dismantling Black Manhood."
That's right. And
the great Sonia Sanchez, of course, there riding herd on your this. How did you get connected to that sister?
Because again, I wanted to do African American literature. So when I first arrived at Temple, I was very much seeking out those individuals who were teaching African American literature. And Malefi Asante, Kariamu Welsh. They all mentioned, well, if you're very interested in literature, you might want to seek out Sonia Sanchez. She's teaching, blah, 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 blah. I think she was in the English department.
In the English department, absolutely.
And so I went to her class. I literally just went to her class. And I told her I was very much interested in literature. I told her I was particularly interested at that time in Dunbar. I had thought I was going to do my dissertation on Dunbar.
And if you all ever get a chance to hear Daniel Omotoshio Black recite a Dunbar poem, count yourself fortunate because you bring it to life. But now we know it was your great grandmother that compelled.
That's right. How funny is that? Absolutely. And she asked me. She said, "Well, do you know Dunbar?" And I said,
"Which one did you do?"
I do. And she said, "Tell me some Dunbar." Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mama.
I know why the caged bird sings. When the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass. When the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. And so I finished that, right? I don't even go through the whole thing. But she was like, "Oh, yes.
Yeah, I know how Sister Sonia is. So, right. Man, you were hers from then on.
From then on.
So you were finished with her, but then you wrote this dissertation. And it's fascinating because it seems like everything you have encountered in your life finds its way into your work, your teaching work, your institution building work, your written work. And when I think about those scenes on board the ship of enslaved people, or our ancestors in The Coming, your work, Dismantling Black Manhood, could you say a little word about how you were led to do that work, and then how, that kind of has informed how you look at our experiences in terms of having gone through enslavement?
Yes, I think, how would I put it? I decided to do this dissertation on manhood and masculinity because at the time, this was 84 84, 85. No. This was 88, 89. At the time, it seemed to me that a lot of our issues as Black people, as Black men particularly, a lot of our issue had to do with the way we were ideologically carrying this weight of masculinity. Like, how do you perform this manhood? And I was really intrigued by this because it seemed like white men weren't asking the same question. So I was trying to figure out why in the world we had to perform it and they could just have it, right? But I was also very, very, very much interested in the ways in which patriarchy has shaped our communities, and the ways in which women were responding to patriarchy, the ways men were, and quite frankly, the ways gay and lesbian men were. You know, I was reading a lot of Audre Lorde, a lot of Essex Hemphill, a lot of Marlon Riggs, because I wanted to see if there was a way we could expand this notion of manhood and masculinity to include a greater number of men, and thus have a greater celebration of a variety of who we are as men.
But then you end up not only entering it with that impulse, but literally dismantling it in the sense that you shift the entire conversation away from even the old language, the old methodologies, the old process. And you ground it in this deeply informed, African-centered, really almost epistemology, way of knowing, but it's one that isn't just continental African. It is the Africa you lived in your life. It's your upbringing, your family, your practices, your rituals. And you know, we watched you defend that dissertation that day. And I think about all the work that has come out since. The field of Black male studies now is emerging. And I think about scholars now writing about what happened in enslavement and the brutality that was gendered. But you... And again, y'all, get his book, The Coming. We're going to talk a little bit about The Coming a little bit later, but you then make a decision. And of course, we know that, you know, so much of your work is not autobiographical, but it speaks to those of us who have made similar decisions, and many who don't have any background in this, who get a glimpse. In your novel, They Tell Me of a Home, you write about this brother who makes a decision to return to the South, armed with that academic licensure to give back in the way that he was poured into. Could you talk about why you made the choice when you could have gone anywhere to take that PhD and return back to Clark, brother?
Yes, because I was very interested then, and I'm still equally interested now, in the ways in which we have hoped knowledge would transform Black existence, the ways in which we have hoped that knowledge would literally make us human beings, the ways in which we'd hoped that knowledge would force white folks, if you will, to honor and respect us. I'm very interested in what was the imaginative hope that Black people have had in a thing called knowing and learning and knowledge and gnosis, right? And so in that book, yes, TL comes back because the truth of the matter is he too is trying to figure out, what is this thing Black people believe knowledge will do for us? What's this magical nature of information? And what does it look like, right, on a people, on a community? I was very interested in that then, and I'm certainly still very interested in that now. I'm also, Dr. Carr, very interested in the ways in which Black people believe that if you get the opportunity to go to school, you owe something back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, the motto of Clark College, now Clark Atlanta University, I tell people all the time, that should be the motto of every HBCU. I'll find a way or make one.
Find a way or make one. I love that.
That should be, it ain't Veritas, that Utilitize, it ain't Electoral. No. That's a Black motto.
I love it. I love it.
You've never just been a classroom teacher. You have at this point produced generations of undergraduates and PhDs, folks who have gone off to study everything from medicine and law to social work. But in that process, you've also built institutions. When I met you, I don't know how many churches you were the church musician for in Philadelphia. You come back to Atlanta. Could you speak a little bit about how you have taken that classroom work that you have apprenticed in and never just anchored it in the academy? And maybe a couple of words, and we'll talk more about this a little bit later, about Ndugu and Nzinga. We're coming up on a break in a minute, but we'll come back in a second. We can continue this. But how important has it been for you to not just have that process of teaching and learning at the university and at the academy?
Extremely important, man, because what I realized doing that dissertation, when I was doing this dissertation on, rites of passage, ancient West African notions of manhood, masculinity, and everything, what I realized is that our ancestors had built institutions. Some of them were invisible. Some of them were also absolutely so profound, like this whole notion of initiation, right? So many West African communities have had this notion of initiation, taking young people through a formalized process whereby they understand and learn who we are, what we believe in, what we stand for, what is good character, etc. And I was just flabbergasted at the ways in which that kind of institution building saved African communities from drowning in things like drugs, from drowning in things like jails and prisons. I was amazed that you could have 2 million people and no prison, right? And so I said, there's something these ancestors knew. There's something they figured out. And I wanted to, number one, figure out what that was. And number two, I wanted to see if it was translatable to a modern context. Right.
And so you were able actually to do that in so many ways. And when we come back, we're gonna pause here. When we come back, let's pick up with that, Dr. Black. Let's pick up with how you made literally that word flesh in terms of what you have built in terms of institutions and the lives that you've influenced, including my own. So we'll be back in a moment. We're taking our second break. We're here at the Black Table. I'm Greg Carr here on the Black Star Network, joined today by Dr. Daniel Omotosho Black. Back in a moment.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Welcome back to the Black Table, joined today by Dr. Daniel Omotosho Black, professor at Clark Atlanta University and world-renowned scholar and institution builder and novelist, essayist. And when we left, Dr. Black, we were talking about your desire, intent to find these practices today and where they weren't, to build them. And could you, you start an institution in Ndugu and Nzinga.
Yes.
When we read The Coming, we see the names, so many names. And as you talk to our students, whether they be students at Howard and the freshman seminar, where you had about 1,200 students read your book,
my God, absolutely.
or the study groups and book circles around the country that you've had with folks who've read not only The Coming, but many other things, and the rites of passage trainings that you've favored all of us with. We've had you several times at Philadelphia Freedom Schools. Could you talk about how you sought to create those spaces for rites of passage and what the effect has been over the years as you've done that work?
Yes, I would say, Ndugu and Nzinga is the most remarkable, the most profound thing I have ever witnessed, experienced, and helped to birth. It really is. It is also the hardest thing I've ever done in life. It really, really is.
And we'll drop the link actually because folks say Ndugu and Nzinga. What is that? And if you want, the website's with www.ndugunzinga.org.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
What is Ndugu and Nzinga?
Ndugu and Nzinga is an initiation system. It's a rites of passage process that teaches Black kids, Black men and women, principle and good character. The means by which we live together in harmony, the means by which we allow each other to be themselves and still find the God in them. Ndugu and Nzinga is a process that absolutely teaches folks what it means to walk like God, quite frankly. And I realized when I was doing my dissertation that our ancestors had already been doing this, of course, for years and years and years. When we were brought here enslaved, of course, they disallowed the initiation process. But that process, that institution, was the reason that African communities thrived and knew things like honor and integrity and humility and forgiveness. And I wanted to see if it would work here. And so when I became a professor 30 years ago now at Clark Atlanta, I put out a call for anybody who might be interested in doing this. And 13 young men came. And we've been doing it ever since. And and the impact is unbelievable. In Duga-Nzinga, I think our graduation rate is probably 92, 93%.
And that's just in the AUC.
Right.
Because you got students literally all over the world. Literally. I mean, how many have, is the phrase that you all use, journeyed?
Hundreds,
really?
Literally.
And then they go and replicate this with others.
That's right. Because there's now an official branch now in New York City.
Oh, of course.
Right.
Of course.
And there'll be going to be some other ones, coming up soon also.
Because I know you got folks in Brazil, you got folks in Europe, Africa.
Absolutely.
Literally, Jeremiah Wright preached his retirement sermon, although I tell him, I know you can't spell it, Baba, but I was at the retirement sermon and Cat came up, my Baba Omatosha. You can't go anywhere without one of your sons or daughters, man. And so many of the names that you have extended to them end up in the beginning of the coming.
Yes.
And so, I do want to ask you, just a quick question about how, for those who don't get a chance to journey in Ndugu, and Ndugu is what, N-D-U-G-U? That's right. And the thing is N-Z-I-N-G-A.org, right?
Yes, that's correct.
For the people who just get a chance to at least experience a bit of this question of rites of passage, how did you all design this rites of passage training, this middle passage experience that you've led thousands through, young children? I mean, tell us a little bit about that, because I've seen it up close, and I tell you, man, it's transformative. Could you say a little bit about that?
It's so intense. It's just so intense. Because, of course, for me, you cannot be a diasporic African and not understand the middle passage, because the middle passage is literally the bridge that brought us over. Like, you cannot be in the diaspora without understanding the middle passage as a defining moment in terms of who we are as African diasporic individuals. And so we created ritual, which is what African people do. We learned about this experience, and then we created ritual around it. And we take folks through this ritual, and it's so unbelievably powerful and transformative. And in fact, I've never seen young people who go through it who are not changed forever.
People, period, Baba. I mean, I've seen you drop down those you don't know. At the time, I think we were at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and you had the biggest numbers with us, hundreds of students. But then you literally come in by yourself, come into the space, train the trainers there, and you had a bunch of teenagers that you trained to assist you in this.
That's crazy.
And then we're all there, and it's like, it is unbelievable. And I guess, and again, hopefully you'll come back and continue to talk with us. I've seen you read from your book, The Coming, and we've mentioned it several times now. And I know that the times that I've seen it discussed, and you actually, was it, what's the church in Brooklyn where they actually had the Ma'afa?
St. Paul's.
St. Paul's. And I mean, there have been book clubs, there have been large numbers of people who've read this. Yes. And it's almost as if in a novel form of sorts, they get a glimpse of that passage. Could you talk about what led you and inspired you to write The Coming? Which is one of, again, many books you've written, and we're going to squeeze a number of those books in before we're done today.
Yes, I wrote the Coming for two reasons. One, as an homage to those, of course, who jumped overboard in the middle passage, or who was thrown overboard. And I tell my students, I have changed my view on that. I don't think that people jumped overboard because they were ready to die. I don't think that. I don't think that's the reason they jumped overboard. I believe now that those ancestors jumped overboard because they were very intentional about wanting to become ancestral. Because in becoming ancestral, they would be more powerful than they had been on the boat.
No question. I've heard you talk about that, man. People talk about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Don't you know they're more powerful now than they were when they were on this side?
Absolutely. 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 And I think that's important, because that means, thousands and thousands and thousands of ancestors dreamed us and paid the price to set us up in this Babylon, if you will, and to thrive and to survive. Right. But we got disconnected from them. And so my hope with The Coming is that I could reconnect us to those who first dreamed us, right? Those who first wanted us, those who said, these people, these ones right here shall not die. They shall not fail. They shall not falter.
Well, Bob, I've seen you do these readings, and I've heard people, and in many ways, and I know you're not alone in this, and you would say you're not alone, but quite frankly, I don't know another individual not just in the Black community, but anyway, who has sparked such a renaissance. And I hate to use that word renaissance. Egyptians, I guess, would say Wahemi Masu, but this spark and interest in reading. And I can almost see your great grandmother saying, yeah, boy, do that. Because you have convened reading circles all over the country, not just with The Coming Course, with your other books, but could you talk a little bit about what it means for us to kind of engage this experience, even when we're just reading about it collectively? Because you've done this all over the country and even outside the country.
Yes. See, growing up in rural Arkansas, I discovered very quickly that there was something Black people believed about the word. There was something Black people believed about language. There was something Black folks believed about the rhythm, right, of speech. I saw it and heard it in sermons. I heard it in the choir music. There were ways people could tell a story, and just the very cadence of their voice would just be mesmerizing. And so very young, I realized that in many ways, our strength as a people in this land, our strength was in our mouth. Wow. Right? And so I began to storytell then. I began to want to storytell. I began to see that literature was more for Black folks, right, than just leisure activity. That literature was life. That literature literally was the means by which we were going to walk into the next century, if we were to survive at all. That we literally were people who, if we put something in our mouth, we could transform it, right, into the very thing we needed for our survival. And so, in writing literature and in trying to capture the cadence, the rhythm of my people's speech, I felt like if we could do that, we could convince Black kids that they are more than what America has told them, that they are more than what America has dreamed or not dreamed for them. That
is so remarkable. And I think about everything you've written and that you share with us publicly, and you're a best-selling author. You've had books that have been optioned to be made into screenplays. You've even taken a hand now at becoming a screenwriter to make sure they don't mess it up. But when I think of 12 Gates to the City or Perfect Peace, when I think of Listen to the Lambs, novels and really almost epistles, are you trying to capture, among other things, those people who are often or think of themselves as unseen, and these stories, as you say, in The Power to Work? Could you say a little bit about your general body of work? And I don't know if any of those novels evoke something in you that you might want to focus on specifically as we kind of end this segment and go into the next segment, and Don't Cry for Me, which is so anticipated. But could you say something about what you're trying to accomplish in your novels?
Yes, I want to, in many ways, I want to unveil the hidden. I want to really reveal and celebrate those individuals, my people, who've never had their historical moment, right? Who've never had their recognition. And I want to show that there is genius. There is absolute genius in these rural Southern country spaces in terms of human beings, just absolute positive genius. And I think that's so important, because there are ways in which too many young people have dismissed or thrown away too many Black elders, too many Black ancestors, because they seemingly didn't look like what those kids were seeing on television, et cetera. But I'm saying there is a genius. There's a genius in a country woman's ability to take potatoes and flour and to make a whole meal. There's a genius in that. There's a genius in that. You know what I mean? There's a genius in a Black man's ability to be called boy, to be disrespected all day long, and still to come home and to teach his children that when you see another man, you respect him, you honor him.
Yes.
And I saw this genius in these people. I really did. And I wondered why, when I was in school, I encountered none of them. And what I realized is that my job would be to insert them into the history, into the literature, into the canon in such a way that in the future, Black children would be proud, right, of their own elders, their own ancestors, and not proud in the sense that they would want them to be something other than what they are, but proud that they are exactly what they are.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Without revision.
Yes, sir. That is, as I think about your body of work to date, it's almost as if everything you've written, everything you've taught and built has led us to this moment. You've been compared to the great memory keepers and writers of previous generations. You've been shaped by so many of those master teachers. And now this new book, Don't Cry for Me, which has been called, it's actually a book of the month pick. It's the most anticipated book. It's been called that by Essence, among other things. You're already traveling to promote the text.
I am.
And I laugh because people are saying, oh, he's one of the great writers like Alice Walker or Ta-Nehisi Coates or Robert Jones. And I have to laugh because you've been here all along, brother. So I know you would never say that about yourself, but we're going to come back in a minute. And when we come back, I hope you will share with us why, Professor Black, you have set out in Don't Cry for Me to bringing so many of the things you've experienced full circle and pushing us to reimagine and re-examine ourselves as you've always done. So we're going to return with our final segment with Dr. Daniel Omotoshio Black, master teacher, institution builder, writer, scholar, and we'll get a peek into his new book, Don't Cry for Me, at the Black Table. Back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Welcome back to the Black Table. We are here with our final segment in an all too short introductory conversation with Dr. Daniel Omotoshio Black. Baba Omo, help us. This book, and this isn't obviously your first success, but when you sent me a picture of the book in the window of the Strand bookstore down there on Broadway, there it is. Don't Cry for Me, Baba. Listen, man. I mean, I think about some of the folks people know, Tyree Jones, Jasmine Ward, of course, Kaisi Lehman, all friends of yours, all colleagues. You've been writing longer than them. And in many ways, you connect in many ways that are even beyond what the New York Times Book Review and other people see. And I think at this moment, though, it's almost like these streams are about to converge. Could you talk a little bit about Don't Cry for Me and what you're trying to get across in something I think the ancient Egyptians would call a Sabaite? Because often those Sabaite in ancient Egypt, as we both know, as you've taught many times, are between a father and a son. Mm-hmm. Instructions. Could you talk about Don't Cry for Me a little bit and what you're trying to do there?
Yes, I'm really excited that this book is out. I really am, and it's doing extremely well. I'm very humbled to say, and I think I'd say two things. And Don't Cry for Me. My hope is to heal the breach between Black fathers and sons. Quite frankly, between fathers and sons of any nation, of any group, of any race, because there are ways that we have conceived fatherhood that does not necessarily endear our fathers to our hearts, and I think that's a very serious problem. And it has caused much, much, much distress. In fact, I really argue that if most of these Black young men in prison, if they could get emotionally tied to a father, I believe we could literally unchain them, literally and emotionally. Because the whole point here, right, is that Black men have fought like hell from the time we arrived in this place to be good fathers and to give to their children. The problem, though, is the means by which to do it was often very, very different and invisible, right? For example, we have so many fathers, yours being one of them, certainly, mine being another, who very often said things like, I've gone to work 32 years, boy, on the same job.
Yes, sir.
Right. But what I did not understand is that they were saying, there was my heart.
No question.
I did not understand that they were saying that that's how I've loved you. I did not, because they never said it that way. And I didn't get the translation. No one told me that love was to come, right? at the extent to which a Black man would physically decide to be away from his children in order to take care of them. The other thing that I think is important is most of us don't know how our fathers thought of us while they were at work.
Isn't that something? You know, when I hear August, I can hear August Wilson in Fences.
Yeah.
When Joy comes out there and challenges him. Boy, I mean, you're right. We never think about that, Black.
We never think about that. But our fathers believed they were giving their all for our survival and for our evolution. They really believed that going to work every single day was the means by which they would show their adoration.
No question. And they poured it into us. You are because we don't never miss a day of work. Your daddy or mine would not stand for us to miss a day of work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in Don't Cry for Me, you complicate that love though, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's important because in Don't Cry for Me, this father gets a son that he thinks he doesn't want. He gets a son who's not as masculine as he would have liked, as he would have dreamed. He gets a son who he understands at some point, in fact, to be same gender loving, he believes, etc. But that's not really even the issue. The real issue is that he gets a son who does not want manhood the way he's always known it.
Wow.
But his problem is, then what will you do?
Right.
What will you be? And that's one of the things I think is very important because in the 30s and 40s, there's no other notion of manhood to have.
That's exactly right. You know, man, it just immediately, you know, they got this new series out. Magic Johnson just did a documentary and I'm looking at his father come from Mississippi to Lansing, then Magic growing up in Lansing, and then EJ coming, and he had to learn to love his son in a different way because of different choices. But as you're talking, it just makes perfect sense. The father didn't know another way to be a man.
That's right. The problem too is that by the time his son in this book, Isaac, comes along, Isaac has different options. Isaac has different ideas. Isaac is a reader. See, we move from segregation to integration. So, you know, Isaac has a whole reservoir of possibilities in terms of identity that his father never had, never knew of, etc. And so now he's trying to figure out, how will I love this child who is so unlike what I think a boy should be, who is so unlike what I've always wanted in a son? How will I love? And so in the early years, he does not really show his love. He does not really demonstrate it. The irony of all ironies, though, is that now, as his father is writing these letters on his deathbed, it will take his son to heal him.
My God.
And of course, as people see, his son, ironically, has a spiritual gift of communicating with ancestors. And now one of those ancestors will be his own father.
My God. Now I know that.
And that's why I switched the Isaac and Jacob and Jacob, instead of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. Because the father has to go to the son for redemption this time.
My God. You know, everything that I've ever known you to do has been informed by the we. Even your choice in The Coming not to have a protagonist, to have a collective voice.
That's right.
Thinking about the thread that you have rearranged our assumptions about so many things. I wonder, as you continue in this work, what do you see for our communities? Not just here in the United States, but beyond, but perhaps especially in the United States, having worked in them so long, having made a commitment that if you had made other types of choices, it could have come with a whole lot more money than all of us have. Right. But at the price of your soul. How important is the message that you have worked in and worked through and communicate with us? How important is it us to engage in this form of healing? What do you see for us going forward?
In fact, very simply, for me, Black people need ritual. We need ritual. We need it as often as we can get it. We need ritual. We need the combining of the visible and the invisible, the physical and the intangible. We need the coexistence of spirit and being and bodily beings. We need it as often as we can get it because our bodies carry so much trauma. Our bodies carry so many wounds and so many pains as Black people, and we cannot figure out what to do with it. It's going to take ritual to translate some of this trauma into creative power. And ritual can do it. Most of us are missing ritual. The closest thing most folks have had here is probably the Black church.
Sure.
But the issue now is we are entirely too lost in the church as we're entirely too lost in the church as the means by which we're going to access our part of white supremacy.
Whoa. You know what? We got to have you back to talk just about that. You're going to blow up theology next. I can hear Jeremiah Wright shouting somewhere right now saying, yeah, we got to have you back on that.
That's really what Christianity is doing. We're trying to figure out how through Christianity we can get our piece of white supremacy. And so really we need other institutions. We don't need more churches. We need some healing centers, right? We need some ritual centers where all we do it's not about religion. See, most people here, especially Black folks, but most of America, we conceive of institutions only as the ones that already exist. Right. We need some institutions that folks have never seen before, which, and I, very humbly, I think Ndugu and Nzinga is one of them.
Absolutely.
And we do amazing ritual work. It's just so much work. It's so intense. I mean, the need is completely and absolutely overwhelming, but the fruit is beyond measure.
Brother, I mean, I think about Paul Coates, our dear beloved brother Paul Coates, the founder of Black Classic Press, of course, Ta-Nehisi's father, who calls Black Classic Press a very new press with some very old ideas. Yeah. So in some ways, Ndugu and Nzinga, a new formation with very old ideas. Yeah. I can't resist the urge to ask you as we kind of wind to a close for now, to ask you what's next. Even as we realize you're going to be on this ride now with Don't Cry For Me for quite some time. Yes, you never stop. You're always thinking, you're always writing, you're always creating. Some of what you just shared with us over the last couple of minutes, you have reduced to print and are preparing to share with the world in a different form. You're best known as a novelist. Soon, I think, as a screenwriter too. But we bring you back. But you seem now to have turned your attention, among other things, to sharing with the world your skills as an essayist. Do you mind saying a little bit about Black?
Absolutely.
On Black. Yes, sir. Yes.
I have an essay collection coming out later this year that I'm thrilled about. It's titled Black on Black. Yes. And it's a group of essays exploring issues, struggles, achievements, difficulties, triumphs in the Black community in America. One essay is about what we lost during integration. Another essay is about the power and problems of Black colleges. Another essay is the reasons I write. Another essay is what we have done to ourselves and how self-hatred has made us fall in love with calling ourselves niggas and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited about this book. I'm really, really, really excited about this book. And as fate would have it, I have another novel I just finished.
What?
So that's going to be coming at some point soon.
Come on, Black. Hey, you remind me of Duke Ellington, man. They asked Duke, which of your pieces is your favorite? And he just leaned back and said, the next one.
The next one. Anyway. And I agree with that.
Man, listen, you all, this has been a real treat. I want to thank you, Doc. I want to thank you, man. No. I mean, not just for me, not just for the audience here at the Black Table, but for the Black world and for humanity at large, for the model of your life, which we know you probably somewhere inching toward about halfway, maybe through in this physical form. We know we're expecting another half century at least of work, but we are, this is a real treat and a revelation. And I've seen you, as you say, you helped open the National Museum of African American History and Culture. I've seen you in front of thousands of folk, and I've seen you with little children and elders just sitting there listening and rocking it. And I want to thank you, Baba, for everything you're doing for us, what you continue to do for us. And we pray your continued strength. Sunday's coming up. You got to work this Sunday. I know you don't take no days off. You still a church musician. How many churches you playing for now?
I'm not even going to answer.
Okay, all right. We're going to say less.
But I am working Sunday.
Of course, always, every day. But we want to thank you, Dr. Black, for joining us. And please come back. We definitely going to have a conversation about the church, about spirituality, and we definitely going to have a conversation about Black on Black. So hopefully you'll come back and join us.
Man, it would be nothing but an honor. And Dr.
The table is named for you. It's the Black Table. So,
I
we can't.
I love that.
Oh, thank you, Baba.
Man, thank you for having me. It's been nothing but an honor. I appreciate it.
The pleasure is ours, Baba. Thank you. So we'll be back in a moment. We're going to have a couple of moments where we clear the table and reset and get ready for our next episode of the Black Table. Back in a moment.
Put 10 in here?
10, and you don't come out till you die. And you eat him, you eat 10.
Oh my God.
So
In his 2015 novel, The Coming, Daniel Black dedicates his book to the memory and celebration of African souls lost in the Atlantic Ocean. Dr. Black writes, "We have not forgotten you. You are our strength. We, your children, exalt you and sing of your glory forever. This is also for those who reached land but never made it home. Your struggle was not in vain. We remember you. We name our children after you. We travel to Mother Africa and take you with us. You are home again." That's from The Coming. We have been blessed this hour to have been joined by Dr. Daniel Omotoso Black, professor at Clark Atlanta University, world builder, institution builder, writer, master teacher, and an example of the possibility of who and what we can be and do when we attach our memory to the living now and imagine a future different than the one that we're experiencing now in the present. So with every week, we're glad you joined us and look forward to you joining us again next week at the Black Table. I'm Greg Carr here on the Black Star Network. Make sure you download the Black Star Network app. Make sure you support Black Star Network and all of its shows. And we'll see you next week.